Good morning, everybody. Hi, Diana. Hi, Peyton and Piper. Nice to see you again. Welcome back to another edition of our virtual keeper chat. I am joined today by one of our zookeepers, Kristy. And as you can tell, we are here with our bald eagles. So I'm going to start by introducing you to Kristy and let her tell us a little bit about these two guys and their species. And then as always, we can take all your questions, or as many as we have time for. So I'm going to turn it over to Miss Kristy.
Hi everybody, I'm Kristy. Thanks for joining us today. So here at the zoo we have two resident bald eagles. The eagle that's up top there is our male. His name is, oh sorry, actually I lied, that's our female. So that is our female. She is our female and her name is Berta. She is about 10 years old and she actually came to us from a rehabber. So she actually injured herself out in the wild, and she actually had an eye injury. So that eye injury caused her to be unreleasable, since bald eagles actually use their sense of vision or their sense of sight for hunting. So she was deemed unreleasable, so that's why she's here with us today. And the other guy over to the left is our male Taz, and Taz is actually 16 years old. He also was a non-releasable bird, so he actually came to us from a rehabber in Alaska. So he's actually from Alaska, and he actually injured his wing out in the wild, was non-releasable, so that's why he's here with us.
Great.
So bald eagles are actually probably one of the most recognizable bird species in the United States. They are our national symbol. They are just a beautiful, magnificent bird. They are a raptor. Raptors are birds of prey. Typically, the three characteristics that you typically would see with birds of prey are going to be that round, hooked beak, which you can see right there on their heads. You can actually see, if you look close, maybe that they both actually have 8 talons on their feet, and then they actually have a very good sense of sight. So those would be the 3 characteristics that all raptors typically share.
Cool. We had a question right away about why they're called a bald eagle.
So that is a very good question. So they are not bald, as you can tell. So these are adult eagles. They have brown feathers on their body. They have white head and white tail feathers. And obviously they have yellow beak, yellow feet, and yellow eyes. So they are not bald. Their name actually came from a Latin name, or their scientific name is a Latin name, and half of that means white, which is, I'm not sure exactly, it has to do with their Latin, the beginning of their Latin name means white, and then the other half means head, so white head. So even though it translates to English as bald, that's sort of where they got their name from.
Great. Let's see. We had a question from Peyton and Piper wondering, are they endangered in the wild?
That is a very good question. So these guys are probably one of the most successful reintroduction and breeding or conservation project to date. So these guys back in early settlers used to hunt them, and then in 1950s they actually had DDT, which was a pesticide that was used regularly, and that DDT actually inhibited or sort of inhibited the growth of, not inhibited the growth, but the shells of eggs. It caused them to be not successful as far as hatching their eggs, and so between the 1960s and 70s, their populations actually did a dramatic decrease. So they were listed on the Endangered Species Act in 1972, but through different conservation, as far as conserving their habitat, as well as reintroduction programs, they've actually made a successful comeback. So currently, federally, these guys are not listed. They're actually listed as species of least concern federally. Here in Massachusetts, they still are a species of concern, but they're not considered endangered.
And do they have any why are they listed here? What are the concerns for them?
So, probably in like 1982 is when they started to try to repopulate Massachusetts with bald eagles. So around 1982, they started actually in the Quabbin Reservoir, and they actually started to do hand rearing of some eaglets, and basically from 1982 to 1989 is when they did this program, and it was a successful program. So they have slowly seen an increase in the Massachusetts populations, and I think currently, or at least in 2018, the last counted was about 72 pairs of nesting bald eagles in Massachusetts. So they still are on an incline. It's a slow incline, so that's why they're still on a species of concern.
Great. And where can we find bald eagles in the wild?
So these guys are actually unique in the sense that they're the one eagle that's actually just found in North America. So these guys, you can find them pretty much in all the states except for Hawaii. So they can be found in Alaska and Canada, down through the lower 48 states to Florida and even Southern California. The biggest populations in the U.S. is going to be in Alaska, with about 30,000 bald eagles in Alaska estimated, and then some other big populations might be in Florida, the North Pacific, and around the Great Lake area.
Great. Ryan, age 12, wants to know what they eat.
So these guys are carnivores, so they do eat other animals. So out in the wild, their main diet, or most of their diet is going to be fish. So they'll eat different kinds of freshwater and marine fish. They will also take birds, such as waterfowl. They'll take small mammals, such as rabbits, muskrats, and they will actually also take amphibians and reptiles as well. They also scavenge, so they are great predators, but they're also opportunistic eaters. So whenever they have an opportunity to scavenge, they'll do that as well, and they'll also try to steal food from other animals.
They're a lot bigger than a lot of the other birds of prey, right? Are they?
Yes, they are the largest birds of prey in Massachusetts.
And we are learning this week through Virtual Zoo Crew. All week it's about extreme parents and families and that sort of thing. What is the deal with how eagles have babies and raise their young, and do they mate for life?
Yep, so these guys in a sense do mate for life, so they do pair up. However, if they were to if one parent or one of the individuals were to die, they would end up finding a new mate. So in that sense, they would find another mate. But for the most part, they do mate for life. So these guys they do, depending on what region they're coming from, is dependent on what time of the year they're going to nest and breed and raise young. Typically in Massachusetts, they'll start courting behavior probably around late fall, early winter, and then from maybe December to February is when they actually build their nest. So it can actually take about 1 to 3 months to build their nest. Their nest can actually be quite large. The average diameter for a nest is about 5 feet, which is pretty big. Probably the oldest, so they do actually reuse their nest yearly, and when they do that, they add probably about another 1 or 2 feet a year with their nest. So probably the record nest that was down in Florida was about almost 10 feet in diameter and about 20 feet deep. So their nests can get quite large. So once they're done building their nests, they do lay eggs anywhere from March to April in Massachusetts. Once they lay their eggs, they incubate them for about 35 days. And once they hatch, they are great parents, and for about up until 10 or 14 weeks is when these guys, or the eaglets, will actually fledge, and they'll become fledglings, which means that they can fly out of their nest. The parents will still take care of them for about 4 or 5 weeks after that, and then I'd say about fall, once that hits, then they're on their own.
And do these guys migrate, or are they with us year round?
So that's a great. So a lot of that depends on where you are. So bald eagles in general can migrate, or they can stay in place. So a lot of that depends on their habitat and the resources around them. So if they have a food source year round, so basically a big water area that is not frozen, they will stay year round. If they don't have that food source, they will migrate either south or towards the coast to have food.
Kaiden, age 9, wants to know are they fast flyers? How fast can they fly?
Yes, so they are fast flyers. So the average speed when they're in flight is probably about 35 to 43 miles per hour. Now, when they do a dive, they can get up to 100 miles per hour. And when they are actually in the process of hunting and they're swooping down to snatch prey, that speed can go up to about 75 miles per hour.
Great. Now, do they have any predators in the wild?
That is a great question. So as adults, these guys typically do not have predators. They are on the top of the food chain. But when they're in their nest as eggs and as nestlings, they can have predators, and that's anything from other birds, other eagles, to raccoons, and anything that can get up into their nest. The biggest threats, though, probably for bald eagles are human-made. So that can be anything from being shot, being poisoned. One of the big poisoning effects right now that is affecting bald eagles right now is lead poisoning. So that would be when hunters use ammunition that is made out of lead, and then once they get an animal and maybe leave part of the carcass down and on the ground, and then of course bald eagles as scavengers will go down and scavenge it. If there's lead pieces in that, they can digest it and they can actually get lead poisoning, and that's very serious and they can actually die from that. Other things too would be habitat loss. So development on coastal areas is one of the big problems, as well as for bald eagles. Electrocution and getting hit by cars would be others.
All right, Tegan, age 8, wants to know if we breed this pair.
That is a fantastic question. So we do not breed this pair. So it's actually not legal for just about anyone to breed eagles in captivity. So bald eagles are still protected under the Bald Eagle and Golden Eagle Protection Act. So you cannot, only if you have a permit are you allowed to actually have bald eagles in captivity, and that's usually for educational purposes. And they do not allow breeding of bald eagles. There's only one institution, I think they're more in the Midwest area, that actually is able to breed eagles, and that was specifically for reintroduction purposes during that whole conservation effort.
All right, Hannah, age 8, wants to know, is there a place that they're most found, or is there a place where they're most prevalent?
In the United States, they are mostly, our biggest population would be in Alaska.
Is that just because of all the coastline?
Yes, that's because it's just open, undeveloped lands.
Can these two fly?
Yeah, so our female is full flighted, so she had an eye injury, which is why she's here with us today. So she would not be able to hunt successfully out in the wild, which is why she was deemed unreleasable, but she does have full flights. Our male is the eagle that had a wing injury, so he actually he still can do a limited flight, but he cannot do a full flight. He gets enough flight where he can get around in our exhibit.
And can you just remind us, we have some folks that joined late, who we are seeing, their names and how old they are and where they're from?
Yep, so the eagle that is straight ahead is our female. She is 10 years old. She is from Massachusetts. She was an animal who got injured out in the wild, was rehab but non-releasable, so she is missing one eye, which is why she's non-releasable. Our other eagle is Taz. He is 16 years old, and he came to us from Alaska. So he somehow injured his wing out in the wild. He was non-releasable, so that's why he's here with us today.
Great. I want to thank Emily for her donation. Your donations are much appreciated during this time of closure when we can't bring in any kind of revenue. So thank you so much for that. Patrick says, hi Kristy, and how many offspring can a mating pair of bald eagles produce within a lifespan?
Oh, a lifespan. Well, hi. Hi, Patrick. So typically these guys will lay about an average of 1 to 3 eggs per clutch, and they'll have one clutch per year. Now they're able to have, they're sexually mature at about 5 years old. They can live to be about average in the wild 20 to 30. So if you do the math, 25 years,
1 to 3
1 to 3 eggs. What is that? So from 25 to 75.
All right. Kaiden, age 9, wants to know, would they ever eat birdseed?
That is a good question. They would not eat birdseed. These guys are carnivores, so they are going to eat the animals that eat birdseed.
And if you're squeamish, turn away, but I will show you. Kristy did feed them, so I'll show you. It looks like they're getting ribs today.
Yeah, so here...
So turn away if you don't want to see their food, but there it is.
So here at the zoo, we feed them a lot of whole prey items. Today actually was giving them some rib bones, so they're just ribs with meat on them. It's usually one of their favorites. But we also feed them whole prey like rats and rabbits and chicks. Fish, obviously, fish is an important part of their diet because that's what they mostly eat out in the wild. So we feed them herring and capelin. Yeah.
And I will maybe just introduce you quickly. They do live on exhibit with a couple turkey vultures, which if you watch the turkey vulture chat, you met Vlad, who's an animal ambassador. But these two are on exhibit. Looks like they're gonna have a little bite of the eagle's food too. Sage, age 6, would like to know, are they mean? Will they attack you?
Our eagles, they like to keep their distance and they like their personal space. So as long as you are slow and you're walking through the exhibit, and as long as you give them their personal space, they are fine, and they do not attack us. But they do like their personal space. If you invade their personal space, they don't get happy.
Diana asked a good question. So if we're not breeding them, why are they living as a pair?
So yes, so typically out in the wild, these guys will be solitary, but they do actually pair up, during breeding season. We just happen to be able to house 2 bald eagles here. So it was an opportunity that we had when they were looking for permanent homes for these guys. So these guys were non-releasable animals. They needed homes, and we just had this available to them. So that's why we ended up with a pair, but we do not breed them.
Great. So Hannah is asking if we go in the enclosure. So I will say we are currently standing in the enclosure right now. Like Kristy said, they're definitely giving us their space, but they're comfortable enough that they're just hanging out. The vultures are certainly comfortable enough. They're right over here eating. And then the other one is over here just checking us out a little bit. And Kristy mentioned the lead poisoning. One of these guys is here because of lead poisoning, actually.
It's actually the guy.
This guy over here.
Yep, so it's Ichabod. He's one of our vultures, and he did actually have lead poisoning. So he had enough neurological issues where he was deemed non-releasable, but he's lucky that he did survive the lead poisoning.
Great. Patty and Tegan want to know if the eagles ever paint.
They do not. No, we never. It'd be great if we could do some sort of painting or even footprints with them, but we currently do not do that with them.
They're just not comfortable with being that close.
Yeah.
Jen, thank you so much for your donation. We really appreciate that. Eli, age 9, wants to know, how wide is their wingspan?
On average, the wingspan on average, the wingspan's anywhere from 6 to 7.5 feet. Obviously, that depends on the size of the eagle. Typically, on average, the males are smaller than the females, so the females are larger, about 25% larger. So typically, the female's wingspan will be a little bit bigger, but also size also depends on what region they're coming from. So northern birds tend to be bigger on average than the smaller birds. So a bird down in Florida will be smaller with a smaller wingspan. And as you get north, they get bigger, the biggest being in Alaska.
Okay. Do the eagles and turkey vultures ever interact?
They do interact. Usually it's about competition for food. So a lot of times the top bird will display or just push off another bird if they want the food, but for the most part, they sort of stick to themselves.
And Christina's asking, do you know how many bald eagles are left in the wild, or that story?
I would say so as far as population estimates, a lot of the studies have sort of slowed down or stopped now that they're off the endangered species list, but typically in North America, they're estimating at maybe 150,000 bald eagles. That's including Canada. And like I said, the biggest population that we have is in Alaska with about 30,000.
Great. Tegan is wondering if you ever let them explore the zoo.
No, these guys are not trained to go outside of their habitat, so they stay inside.
Yeah, so you may have met Sam with some of our animal ambassador birds of prey or raptors, like Cisco and Vlad, the turkey vulture. Those guys were injured at a much younger age and were able to be trained to stand on a glove and come out. Just depends on the situation. These guys are definitely not comfortable with that. As you can see, they're definitely keeping their distance from us and keeping an eye on us. All right, well, I think we have gone through all the questions. I just feel like you guys all love Molly so much. I do want to mention that we are next to Molly. Her enclosure shares a wall with this one, and she's just being ridiculous today. So I am going to let you say hi to Molly real quick on our way out. If you didn't see her keeper chat a few weeks ago, definitely check it out. She is very excited that we are here saying hi. So thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, Kristy, for introducing us to our vulture and eagles. Thank you to those of you who donated. We really appreciate that. We will be back tomorrow with another edition of our virtual keeper chats. We hope you all have a wonderful day, and we'll see you soon.